Joining me now to discuss that menu of options and what the Chancellor may pick is Ryan Shorthouse, founder and chief executive of Bright Blue, an independent think tank promoting liberal conservatism. Ryan, welcome to the programme. Thanks so much for being with us. Now, you say at Bright Blue, good morning, that you expect tax changes from the Chancellor. Who will benefit and how much will they cost, do you think?
So I think, the spring statement is not a budget, so it's not going to be as comprehensive in the announcements that are made today. But I think, obviously, the Chancellor will squarely focus on supporting households on modest incomes with the cost of living crisis. And he'll do that, I think, in two ways. One is cutting taxes, and the other is increasing subsidies. Really, he should be focusing on broad taxes like VAT, income tax, national insurance, and broad subsidies like universal credit, because that's fairest in terms of supporting a broader range of people. It is rumoured, for example, that he's going to focus on fuel duty, which is what the government has cut in real terms, fuel duty, since 2011. I suspect he'll do the same today. I don't think that's the best use of public money. If you look at the 20% poorest households, fewer than half of those actually own a car. And my point is that really the Chancellor should be focusing on broader taxes and broader subsidies to support a broader range of people.
Yeah.
So I think he'll focus on fuel duty, but I also think he'll look at national insurance, because, of course, the health and social care levy, the new national insurance rise, comes in force from this April. A lot of people are angry about that, both in the Conservative Party and on the Labour benches. It's there to fund, remember, the kind of backlog in the NHS caused by COVID, and finally that sort of injection of financial support for social care. So, I don't think he's going to scrap the health and social care levy. Lots of people are calling for that. But I think he will modify it. So, for example, I do think he'll raise the primary threshold for when you pay national insurance and the health and social care levy. It's just above 9,000 at the moment, which is obviously a lot lower than the threshold for paying income tax. So I suspect he will raise that. But don't expect huge things. I think there'll be fuel duty, the national insurance rise. They will be the main things. And hear from the Chancellor as well that things are so volatile at the moment, particularly with energy prices, that he'll probably wait to see what his support package, which he announced in February, will do before announcing anything further in the budget in the autumn, I think.
Yeah, because the Chancellor has said that he wants to be a tax-cutting Chancellor, yet tax rates are at the highest since the 1950s. So, as you say, this is a very difficult moment with a great deal of pressure on this Chancellor who managed to navigate the pandemic with a great deal of help for households. Now the expectations perhaps are also going to be high that the government can do something about what are, global oil and petrol and energy prices going up.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because the Chancellor, I've never sort of seen a Chancellor like this who says one thing and does something very different. In many ways, he's sort of wanting to be quite Hayekian in his approach to economics. We have to have strong fiscal discipline. We need to keep inflation under control. But his response to COVID and his response now is quite Keynesian. He's looking to increase the size of the state. As you say, taxes are at their highest levels. He's going to use a mix of tax cuts and subsidies today, I think, to help people through the cost of living crisis. Back in the autumn, even with the level of the deficit that we did, he still announced through the spending review year-on-year increases in public spending across different departments. So this is, the Chancellor says he's a kind of following Hayek and wants to sort of kind of ruthless commitment to keeping sound public finances and low taxes. But yet, actually, he's following a course which is expanding the size of the state and increasing taxes. And the other thing, of course, is he's talking about security.
Yes.
That's the sort of big buzzword today. Help, providing security for families. But as Martin Lewis, the Pounds of Money saving expert, has said, nowhere there's no way enough which has been given by the government to support people with spiralling energy prices. So
Yeah.
I do think the Chancellor needs to be careful here, because he often says things like, I'm a tax-cutting Chancellor, but yet is overseeing the biggest, the sort of highest tax burden that the UK has faced for a very, very long time. So, I've just noticed there's a bit of disconnect between the rhetoric and the action with this Chancellor.
Also, how much do you think that Conservative MPs are going to support him in this? And how much fiscal leeway does he really have? Because the latest figures that we have in terms of the budget deficit looked a little bit rosier yesterday. Having said that, things could change very rapidly as we go into next year. The impact of higher energy costs and wages and much more on government spending, and also that pressure on defence spending too. How much fiscal leeway does this Chancellor really have, and how much will Conservative MPs support him?
Well, the forecast is, the borrowing figures from October compared to now suggest that actually the government has seen a sort of about a £26 billion reduction in borrowing. And a lot of people are saying, well, that's some headroom to use now. The Chancellor, of course, will say, well, we've spent £8 billion additionally in February on the kind of package of measures to support households with energy costs. And then on top of that, the interest rate payments on servicing the government debt will continue to increase. So, there is better than expected borrowing figures over the past 6 months, caused by a variety of things, not least inflation, and also increased tax receipts as a result of that inflation. But the Chancellor will say that headroom is quickly dwindling, and if I'm going to be prudent and have sound finances, then I need to make sure that we're keeping a grip on this deficit, which is still incredibly high because of the actions that were taken for COVID as well. So this is a very different period from where we were post-financial crisis in 2008. The crash then, when the government were very worried about the size of the government deficit. They saw what was happening in Greece and made an argument that they needed to really quickly and urgently reduce the government deficit. That is not something that the Chancellor is doing. We are in very, very different times, a very different approach to an emergency crisis from this Conservative government, which, as I say, is following Keynes rather than Hayek much more in its approach.
Okay, so a last thought, Ryan, if you would. The idea of business taxes, we are talking to the British Chambers of Commerce, we have heard from the CBI, they want more help with capital investment. This is the thing that's going to boost growth and jobs long term. So does he do something on that front, Rishi Sunak, and on the levelling up agenda? That's the kind of long term trajectory that the government has espoused. How does this mini budget statement, at least, play into kind of the idea of being able to level up poorer parts of the country?
Yeah, so on business taxes, I think you may find an indication from the Chancellor of a direction of travel without any big announcements today. I think he maybe set the scene for the budget later in autumn. But I do think, the super deduction on corporation tax, which is there to incentivise investment, I think that expires in 2023. We've got a paper out today from Bright Blue calling for that super deduction to continue, to move to full immediate expensing of capital investment from 2023. So I think there's some big questions around how you incentivise investment going forward, and I think full expensing is the way to do that. We've called for that in the paper. There's also business rates, which have long sort of troubled businesses. In the paper that we've got out today, we're talking about shifting business rates to commercial landowners rather than occupants, based on unimproved land values, which we think would be a fairer way of doing business rates. And then, we've also in the paper talked about targeted tax relief, which don't get much scrutiny, and think there should be better scrutiny. I mean, we do provide a lot of scrutiny over subsidies, government spending. We don't do enough around certain tax relief, whether that's the patent box, the film tax relief, the employment allowance, venture capital relief. All of those things we think need to be reformed and evaluated much more effectively. So, I think there's lots that could be done. Our paper gives food for thought, but I think the Chancellor today won't announce stuff on that, but will say that, in the autumn budget, there will be much more on the future of business taxation.
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe, weekday mornings at 6 a.m. on London DAB digital radio and on demand via the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com.